A carefully planned Windsor family meeting was suddenly brought to an end before it had properly begun, and according to the account presented in the original material, the reason was the unexpected presence of Camilla's private solicitor. The gathering had reportedly been arranged over a long period and was supposed to deal with important questions surrounding the future of the royal family. It was framed as a private family discussion, rather than a formal legal meeting, with senior members expected to attend. But when William entered the room and noticed a lawyer representing Camilla personally, he allegedly realized that the nature of the meeting might be very different from what he had been led to believe. The distinction between a family conversation and a legal negotiation is significant. Once a private solicitor is present, statements and informal agreements can potentially take on a different meaning. The original account suggests that William had not expected this person to be there and that her presence immediately made him suspicious of the purpose behind the gathering. Rather than taking his seat and discovering the agenda afterward, he reportedly chose to leave and prevent the meeting from proceeding. The story connects this incident to the wider history of royal family negotiations, including the well-known Sandringham meeting in January 2020, when senior members of the family discuss Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties. The Windsor meeting, however, is presented as being connected to longer-term questions about the future of the monarchy and what might happen after King Charles's reign. Charles's cancer diagnosis in 2024 is used as part of the background because it inevitably brought questions about succession, responsibilities, residences, and the future positions of family members closer to the surface. Windsor itself is also portrayed as significant because, unlike the more institutional atmosphere associated with Buckingham Palace, it carries a deeply personal and family-oriented history. According to the narrative, the informal setting may have been intended to encourage openness and lower everyone's defenses, yet that atmosphere allegedly had the opposite effect on William. Seeing a private lawyer in a meeting described as a family discussion supposedly made him believe that the gathering was not simply about talking, but about obtaining some form of understanding or agreement. The account argues that this was why leaving the room was, from William's perspective, safer than remaining and potentially allowing his words or reactions to be interpreted later as support for an arrangement he had never knowingly agreed to. The central issue described in the source is what it calls continuity for Camilla after Charles's reign. It is important to emphasize that the material itself acknowledges that the specific documents and official details have not been publicly released, so the claims about the exact purpose of the meeting are presented as an interpretation of the reported circumstances rather than established fact. The narrative suggests that Camilla's side may have wanted greater certainty about her future position, including questions surrounding residences, financial arrangements, public standing, and possible involvement in family affairs after Charles was no longer king. From Camilla's perspective, the concern is portrayed as understandable. Her position at the center of the institution exists largely because she is the wife of the reigning monarch, and a change of reign could dramatically alter that position. Charles, according to the account, would naturally want to make sure that his wife would be treated with dignity and would not suddenly find herself without the protection and security she had enjoyed as queen consort. William, however, would eventually become the monarch with authority over the future direction of the institution, making any attempt to establish arrangements before his reign potentially sensitive. The narrative therefore describes a clash between two different fears. Camilla would be concerned about losing security and influence, while William would be concerned about entering his future reign with arrangements already established without his clear approval. The source also connects William's reaction to the complicated history surrounding his mother, Diana. It portrays him as someone who grew up watching institutional decisions being made around his family and therefore particularly distrustful of situations where decisions appear to be engineered behind closed doors. In that interpretation, the Windsor setting and the language of family were not enough to make him feel safe once he noticed the solicitor. Instead, they may have reminded him of exactly the kind of indirect pressure he had learned to distrust. The account describes his reaction as disciplined rather than explosive. Instead of creating a public confrontation, he allegedly refused to participate and left, thereby preventing any informal discussion from becoming evidence of agreement. That approach is presented as a strategic move because a dramatic argument would have created a story that could easily be used against him, whereas a quiet refusal gave the other side little material to work with. The source further claims that there may have been a private conversation afterward between Charles and William, in which Charles explained that his motivation was protecting his wife rather than undermining his son. William, according to the account, could understand the concern while still rejecting the method. The central argument attributed to him is essentially that if an arrangement is reasonable and fair, it should be capable of being discussed openly rather than introduced through an unexpected lawyer at an informal family gathering. The aftermath, as presented in the original narrative, is less about a dramatic confrontation and more about the consequences of a meeting that never happened. If William did indeed refuse to participate because he believed the gathering had changed from a family conversation into something more formal or strategic, then the immediate result would have been that no agreement could be reached through that particular setting. The story suggests that this also established a new boundary. Future family meetings would need to make the presence of legal representatives clear in advance if everyone was expected to treat the discussion as informal and personal. The account additionally brings Princess Anne into the story, portraying her as someone who would understand the importance of proper procedure and who would supposedly recognize that a lawyer appearing unexpectedly in a family meeting could reasonably raise concerns. It then describes how news of the cancelled gathering might have circulated without the palace giving a detailed public explanation. The absence of an official account naturally leaves room for speculation, but it does not by itself prove the specific events described in the narrative. The most important unresolved issue is therefore the same one that existed before the meeting. What should happen to Camilla after Charles's reign? And how can that question be addressed without creating another conflict with William? The source presents both sides as having legitimate concerns. William would have a reasonable interest in protecting his future authority and refusing to be pressured into an agreement, while Charles would have understandable reasons for wanting to protect his wife and provide her with security after his death. Camilla's desire for certainty can likewise be understood as a response to an uncertain future, rather than automatically being treated as evidence of bad intentions. The tragedy of the situation, according to the narrative, is that an attempt to secure the answer through an allegedly carefully arranged environment may have made an honest discussion even more difficult. Trust is already described as weak, and once one side believes the other attempted to maneuver them, rebuilding that trust becomes harder. In the end, the most significant event was not a shouting match, a public confrontation, or a signed agreement. It was the decision not to participate. The story's larger message is that royal power often operates through procedure, timing, information, and silence rather than dramatic public arguments. William's alleged decision to walk away is therefore portrayed as a calculated refusal to allow the meeting itself to become the mechanism through which an agreement could be created. Whether every detail of the account is accurate remains uncertain because the underlying claims are not publicly documented, but the broader question remains compelling. Should William have refused the meeting entirely? Or should the family have found a transparent way to discuss Camilla's future openly? That unresolved question is ultimately what gives the story its tension. The main issue was reportedly Camilla's future after Charles's reign. The original account suggests that her side wanted greater certainty about her position, including her residence, security, public role, and possible involvement in family matters. Charles would naturally want to protect his wife, while William would want to ensure that no major arrangements were made without his approval as the future king. William's reaction is also linked in the story to his experiences surrounding Diana, which may have made him especially cautious about decisions being arranged behind closed doors. When he allegedly noticed Camilla's private solicitor at what was supposed to be a family discussion, he interpreted the situation differently. Rather than arguing or creating a scene, he reportedly chose to leave, preventing the meeting from becoming an opportunity for any informal agreement to be later presented as his support.